Cody Dericks with Next Best Picture, and I'm speaking with the composer of the new film, Hedda, Hildur Guðnadóttir. Hildur, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Happy to be speaking with you.
Likewise.
So you've composed quite the ear-catching score for Hedda, definitely playing in a wide variety of forms, and I definitely want to get into that, but I think I want to start at the beginning. What you thought when you first were pitched this movie or read the script, and what your initial ideas were for the sound of the film, and if that kind of made it to the finished product.
Yes, it absolutely did. Well, when I first was pitched this film, I was very excited because I actually started working in theater and before I started working in film. So that's really the way of working in theater, you know, the way that music, you know, the musician, the composer is a part of the whole process of rehearsing. You know, you're in every single rehearsal, you're in discussions with the production designer and the lighting designer and, you know, everyone. That really influences the way that I write music for film, because I think I learned a lot in that process that I brought with me to the film medium. And so I love theater, and I think Hedda is one of the most exciting female characters in theater history, you know, and I think she's one of these rare, juicy women characters of you know, it's very unusual, you know, 1890 for a man to write a character like Hedda, I think, and still into the 20th century, you know, having a female character that's so multifaceted, you know, it's like, you know, she's like, you know, devious and exciting, and she doesn't do what she's told, and she's, you know, she's her own woman, you know. And so I, you know, at the beginning I thought it was very exciting to explore her character, and I loved Nia as well. Of course, I played in her film Candyman on Rob Lowe score. He's a really good friend of mine, and you know, I played some of his music on that film, and so I knew her work since then, and I thought she was a very exciting and bold young filmmaker that I was excited to see, you know, where she'd take things, and so yeah, so I was excited to work with her as well, and so in the beginning, we kind of, what we were discussing was that we wanted the music to be energetic, and we wanted to have, you know, be driving and exciting, and to kind of draw people in a way that was energetic, you know, because I think that the tricky thing about making films from plays is that they can tend to be a bit heavy and dry, because the scenario, when you're just working with one stage, is kind of limited, and, you know, so you don't do a lot of traveling normally in theater productions, and you know, there tends to be a lot of dialogue. So we wanted it to have like energy and movement and excitement, and of course we knew that there was going to be this band playing in the party, so we knew that we were going to be working with like jazz songs. So I wrote a song that the band plays in the film, and that kind of became the love theme as well. So it's like both played by the band, and then it gets, you know, goes into the score, and it's a song that both has, you know, it can work in a very energetic way, but also in a kind of ballad way. So it was exciting to work into that, and Nia wrote the lyrics for it, so that was a nice collaboration. And then there was this other element of the score that I always think it's kind of exciting when you're working with a period piece, and like this one is set in the 1950s in England, and I think it's always kind of important to understand what's happening in music of the time and place where the film takes place. And when I was doing that research, I came across this English composer called Cornelius Cardew, who would have been starting out at this time, and he had this like really exciting way of working with amateurs and professional musicians in a way that made his piece like very kind of wild and exciting. And I thought that was such an exciting idea. So for me, you know, I felt that he was one of the people in the party, because of course the party is like, you know, it's put together from all these like, you know, aristocrats and also all these like art types that are kind of wild and more exciting.
Right.
So in my mind, like he was in the party, and he was like kind of putting together one of his like, you know, his first ideas for these pieces that he was working on. So and the way that I kind of formulated that for the film was that I got the cast and the crew together and had them sing and breathe together, which I thought was exciting, because you know the cast often has some sort of musical experience or singing experience, but it's not necessarily a requirement that when you're, you know, the gaffer, you don't normally need to have like, you know, the best voice.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. But so I just formed this choir. So I went on set and just grabbed whoever was available and ready. So it was, you know, the women from the production office and the gaffer and a dolly operator and some of the extras and some of the main crew that were all singing doing all the singing and the breathing together.
So is that the kind of breathing sound that underlies a lot of the movie? Because that immediately stood out to me. I definitely wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So originally, before we shot anything, and just, you know, I can't remember if it was even before I read the script or just when I was reading a script, both Nia and I were, for some reason, both thinking a lot about breath. And, you know, I had just read a book that was called Breath, about the kind of just like the physiological mechanisms of breathing. And she had just been like visiting the Samuel Beckett play that was called Breath, and was essentially just like an in-breath and an out-breath. So we were, for whatever reason, both thinking a lot about breath. So since that was just so coincidental, we thought it was nice to kind of bring that coincidence into the film, and of course that was perfect when I was working with our choir, which I've started calling them people of the house. When I was working with the people of the house, it was just, you know, obviously people can be kind of nervous about singing if they're not used to singing, you know, but everyone breathes. So it was a great way of just like starting our work together, was just to breathe together and start to access that way of making sound together through breathing, because that's so accessible. And I think it ended up being such a nice energetic vehicle, I think, for the storytelling. The sense of breathing, and also knowing that the people breathing are the actual people that breathe life into the actual production. Like, it's the people that make the production happen, you know, which I think is just such a nice way of celebrating how many people it takes to make a film, you know, because it's so many, sometimes hundreds of people that come together to make a film happen, you know.
Yeah, the breathing really stuck with me. To me, it kind of read almost as, you know, this was just how I interpreted it. This character of Hedda, she's moving through her life and she's committing these deeds and misdeeds that are going to be judged or interpreted by a crowd. And the breathing was kind of almost that crowd to me, you know, to your point, the people of the house, the people who are there, who are witness or party to these actions, who may or may not approve.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow it's like, it brings a lot of it's just like, it brings a lot of energy with it, you know, because when it just like has like hands, you know, it kind of like, ooh, it just kind of like spikes you forward.
Almost horror.
Which is also, I think, yeah, exactly. But I think that was just such a practical vehicle, in the sense of what we were looking for of having energy in the in this staging of the play, to not have it sit heavy, but to kind of have these moments of like just jolts of awakenings.
Yeah, so to me, the score for the most part, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but to the untrained ear, it sounds like it's mostly split into two distinct kind of realms. There's the jazzy, sensual score that a lot of the characters are hearing themselves, but is sometimes underlying what's going on. And then there's the more percussive score that accompanies a lot of more internal machinations. Can you tell me your intentions when you were composing those two very distinct sounds for the same film?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's those two elements, and then there's also the I think the voices would be the third element, I think, as well, and that kind of the presence of these onlookers, somehow like that comes with the voices. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like so the jazz score is really just, it's a way to kind of put us in a place and to put us in a mind space of being in a party, and it's alive and it's fun and it's exciting, and so that's one of the vehicles, and just the time, the time element, we're in this time through this music, which then kind of like seeps. And I think that's what's the interesting thing about starting so early to work on these things, and when you're working on them alongside production, and you're going on set and you're playing the music on set, and you can kind of thread all these like kind of intricate musical threads of taking parts of the song and weaving them into the score, and kind of taking some of that energy that you get from the song and the connection that you have, for example, between Eileen and Hedda, so that kind of becomes a kind of love theme that also plays out in the score, that has this kind of memory of them seeing each other, and then again, elements of the energy of the kind of jazz drumming also comes into this energy that you have of her kind of inner workings, which I think a lot of the percussion is doing. It's kind of like her. It's almost like the clockwork of her mind. Her plotting is that kind of like gets energy from the percussion, and her mind is constantly like constantly working and constantly plotting something. So I think a lot of that energy comes from the drums. And again, but again, it's just the same percussionist that plays the song in the beginning, in the jazz version, that also plays the percussion. So it's again like threading these lines of they're different, but they're also the same, and because they're of the same world of this of the story, and also the way that I put together the percussion parts are also drawn in the same way that I was thinking about, what kind of vocal writing was potentially happening at this time. The way the percussion is put together is also drawn from percussion music that was happening at the time. Like people like, for example, like John Cage, who wrote a lot of percussion music, was working with these elements as well, like, wood and glass. And he would mostly have wood, and then he'd have like a specific like kind of clinging element to go against that, So there was also drawing from the kind of mentality of the time, which I think is also exciting when you're working on a period film.
So for the percussion, did you then use kind of unusual objects? Because I was trying to play some of those instruments and I couldn't quite get all of them.
Yeah. It's mostly lots of glasses and bowls and like different wood blocks and lots of different percussion instruments that are played so majestically by two of my favorite percussionists in the whole world, Robert Chilkowski and Joey Barron, who are just absolute masters of percussion. So it was a real joy to get to record that with them, and I think percussionists probably have the most fun of all the instrumentalists, because they always have this completely wild collection of stuff that has all these different sounds. So yeah, there's lots of I think it's mostly kind of just strange objects that they put together, and then a couple of wood blocks and a couple of drums,
Right. Yeah, I was always jealous of the percussion kids in band.
Right?
Yeah. I just had the stupid
Yeah.
violin. What fun can I have with that?
I know. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was in youth orchestras. I was like, the brass players and the percussionists always had like way more fun than the string players.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, what am I doing in the string
Yeah.
section?
So you mentioned that you were on this production early on, which is generally, as far as I know, the composer is one of the last people that gets to do their work on a film. Is this the first time you've been involved that early in the production of a film?
No, it's kind of my usual way of working.
Kind of
So
your
that
thing?
was
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. That was what I did, for example, on Joker and Chernobyl and well, really most of the productions I do, film productions, I've started normally just right after reading the script. Or Tar, I think I was the second person to join that project after Kate and
Mhm.
so I think that's and again that comes back to my theater, my theater background, because that's really the way that the way you work when you work on music for theater, is that you're there for the whole time, and then you're making music alongside the production. So you're having these discussions with with the lighting designer and the costume designer and all the people, all the elements are happening together. And I just learned in that process that music just has so much to bring, I think, into exactly the time that you're deciding what the story is, and having music, like we did, for example, in Joker, where the whole film is really shot to music, and music is allowed to really influence, some of the major scenes. They're really playing on the music, like this bathroom dance scene and stuff is really just a reaction to the music. And I think that it can bring so much to that process, especially again when you have so many people working on set, and not just like the the actors and the cinematographer and the kind of the people that you feel the most, but also just like the whole crew, for the whole crew to understand what the kind of tempo and the sound world of the film that's being made is. I think it can kind of bring everyone into the process. I've learned through this way of working. Like I feel like, I remember when I came on set for Joker, and everyone had been like listening to my music, like, nonstop every
Yeah.
single day, all day for about like 2 months. By the time that I arrived, I thought like, oh my God, I hope they're not going to kill me.
Puts you in a very specific
so much.
headspace.
Exactly. But I just felt that, everyone was so grateful for that, and felt that it was so helpful. So, of just like kind of, because I think music it can kind of, you can explain a lot with music that you can't explain with words, I think, or at least for me, because I'm not really a word person. I'm a music person. So it's much easier for me to access feelings and explanation with, through music than through words. And I think that can kind of, I think everyone, even though everyone experiences music differently and probably hears different things, I think we all probably hear different things to what we, even if we're listening to the same thing, but it can kind of, you can kind of enter the same temporality, at least, the same sense of timing and the same sense of tonality. I think that that's a kind of shared space, I think, to enter.
So you mentioned you worked on a song with Nia DaCosta, Stolen Tale, which plays out over the end credits as well. And you mentioned working with her and her general ideas. What was it like? I know you said you worked on Candyman in the instrumental part of it, but as a director, what does she do as a filmmaker that was new for you, that you hadn't experienced on another production?
Well, I think that I think Nia is kind of unusually relaxed about the filmmaking process that I find really wonderful. Like it's because I think that films are big. It's like they're big productions and they're normally very expensive, and so there's a lot of pressure that tends to come with it, and there's people can sometimes get a bit nervous, or there's just like you can feel the pressure sometimes in the way that people are working. It's not exactly the same as just like working on a novel by yourself in in an isolated space, and you have all the time in the world. There's time pressure, there's financial pressure, there's all these different types of pressures, but Nia, I think, is unusually kind of relaxed about those pressures, and she doesn't really let that, at least in any way that anyone can feel. Does she? I feel like let that kind of tamper with what it is that she wants to do or she wants to say, or how she is with the process. And I think that's really refreshing and really, really lovely, because I think a kind of her relaxed manner, I think, gives a lot of space for her collaborators to bring ideas to the table, and to kind of really work from their craft, so I could see that in the way she worked with the actors and the costume designer and the cinematographer. She tends to work with the same people again, and then you get to know each other, and you have just kind of, it makes for a very nice working situation, I feel like.
So you mentioned our good friend Cornelius Cardew, but
Yeah.
did you have any other musical inspirations, whether that was film scores or otherwise, when you were composing the score?
No, not really.
All right. A singular vision, I see.
Well, I tend to, I think it's I mean, I think everyone is influenced by everything they hear, of course, like all the time, whether you want to realize it or admit it or whatever, so I'm probably, I'm like everyone else, influenced by whatever's happening around me. But I think that the way that I try to work, and again, coming back to why I start so early all the time, is that when you really have the time to really kind of let ideas come to life, and try ideas out and see how the idea is sitting with the whole process of making the project. I think that it allows for more openness, I think, in the way that you approach what you're doing. So that's kind of how I try to work from that place of that kind of spaciousness of really just first trying to understand what is the sound world that we're in, like what is the big picture, the container, like the tempo map of the whole world, and the instrumentation or the orchestration of the whole world, and then kind of work into that. And and I try to not kind of reach for anything anything on the outside into that process. Like I really just try to listen to what's happening in that process, just kind of naturally. And this is also kind of, you know, this way of working is practical in that way that this means that you're not like stuck with temp.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to like recreate because exactly. So there's I'm normally not replacing any temp, which means that you know, other music is normally not directly influencing what's happening with the connection between the music and the cut, you know.
Before I let you go, I of course have to talk about your Oscar win for Joker.
Mm-hmm.
You had an extensive career before that, obviously, but can you tell me how that achievement and that, you know, award affected your career moving forward?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, of course, that I think the funniest thing about that is it's kind of like getting married to someone by accident because you require this kind of you require this extension of your name.
Yeah, this bond now.
The prequel to my name has become Oscar winner, Hildur Guðnadóttir, which was an interesting side effect that I didn't fully anticipate. But all jokes aside, I think what really has I guess been the biggest difference for me is that it you know, when I was starting out as a woman in this field, like I came across this a lot, and I've also had this actually since winning the Oscar. Like I've been asked if I can handle working on a project, you know. So I think it's very hard to. I mean, it's very hard to get one foot even into the door of this business, you know, and so that requires, well, many things like, you know, luck and stubbornness, I guess, and also, you know, because of the ways that I am interested in working, maybe not being definitely at the time not being like the kind of industry standard way of working. You know, I was kind of maybe approaching things from a slightly different angle. So I definitely feel like in the beginning of my career that it took some work to get people to trust me, you know, and I can also understand that, you know, when you come into a production like Chernobyl and you say like, you know, I want to make the whole score from a nuclear power plant and not one instrument, and you know, and how do you kind of, you know, persuade people that you can actually make that happen?
Yeah.
It's I can understand that people are skeptical of that. Exactly. So I think what, you know, what this, you know, the Oscar and these awards have maybe just kind of given people some faith in that I can handle these projects, and that even though, you know, I sometimes work in unorthodox ways, that they can also just like bring something to the, you know, to the projects, and so I feel like that's the main thing that I find the most important is the level of trust that I feel like I now have after that is way higher than it was before. But other than that, you know, I think, well, I mean, I get maybe more offers also to do things, but I still don't, you know, I work very much in the same way that, you know, I don't work with a team of people. Like I still do, you know, I work with my engineer and you know, a couple of people that help me with some edits and things like this, you know, but I don't have like a team of people who are like, you know, writing in the background or anything like this. I'm pretty much just me in this room and quite similar, you know, You know, I've had this mic for about like 20 years now, and
Oh,
I
wow.
still record.
Okay.
I still record almost like everything.
It ain't broke.
It's pretty dingy. It's
Yeah.
just about hanging on this stand. But I think that, it's so I work in very similar ways that I did before, and I think that I still have, the process is still more important to me than anything else, and I try to just stay true to that. So not much, and I still live in Berlin. I didn't move to LA. I still
I was gonna ask, it's pitch black outside, but
exactly
1 p.m. here in Chicago.
Exactly. It's 7:30 where I am in the evening. Yeah.
All right, Hildur. Well, congrats on Hedda. It's an exceptional score for a fantastic movie, and thank you so much for chatting with me today. This was great.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.